David knew what many did not know. In 1 Samuel chapter 17, the Israelite army faced the Philistines and their formidable champion Goliath. During a visit to the camp to see his older brothers, David encountered Goliath for the first time. The attitude of facing and dealing with anything recognized as dangerous, difficult, or painful, instead of avoiding it, is the quality of being fearless or courageous. Value. That is the definition of courage from the Webster New World Dictionary. Saul and his army gathered nearby, with the valley of Elah dividing them. The Philistine army positioned itself for battle near the valley of Elah, southwest of Jerusalem and near Gate. A champion named Goliath came out of the Philistine camp daily for 40 days, challenging the armies of Israel to send him a worthy opponent. We see what happened to the Israelites when Goliath appeared, 1 Samuel 17 verse 11. When Saul and all of Israel heard these words from the Philistines, they became discouraged and very frightened. Goliath was not to be underestimated. The man was truly enormous, with a spear weighing approximately 15 pounds and armor weighing about 125 pounds. He measured between 9 and 11 feet tall. It would be unwise to underestimate him as an opponent. It was normal for everyone in the field to feel fear. Even the king was afraid. How can common soldiers have courage if the king is afraid? On one occasion, when David was bringing supplies to his 3 older brothers on the front line, he heard the taunts of the giant and saw fear on the faces of the Hebrew soldiers. David could have been afraid because no one respected him. First, he was not respected because of his youth. 1 Samuel 17:26-30, Amplified Bible. Then David spoke to the men near him. What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes the disgrace from Israel's challenge? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? The men told him what would be done for the man who killed him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard what he said to the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David. He said, "Why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the wickedness of your heart. You came down only to watch the battle." But David said, "What have I done now? Was it not just a harmless question?" So David turned away to someone else and asked the same question, and the people gave him the same answer as before. His brother thought he was just a boy seeking excitement. Also, King Saul thought David was too young to face Goliath. 1 Samuel 17:31-33, Amplified Bible. When the words David spoke were heard, the men reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no one's courage fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are just a young man, and he has been a warrior since his youth." After a while, Saul agreed to the battle between Goliath and David. Now you would think that after this David would be more confident, but even Goliath, the cause of the problem, disrespected him. 1 Samuel 17:41-43, the Philistine came and approached David with his shield-bearer ahead. When the Philistine looked and saw David, he disdained him because he was just a youth, ruddy and handsome. The Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks?" And the Philistines cursed David by his gods. David faced his brothers Saul and Goliath that day, and all 3 did not show great confidence in him. But why did he continue advancing, facing all the disrespect at every moment? Some despise us for various reasons. For some it may be because of age, whether young or old. Do not let anyone despise you because of your youth, but be an example and set a standard for the believers in word, conduct, love, faith, and moral purity. 1 Timothy 4:1. The question is whether David was not terrified of Goliath when the entire army of Israel, including Saul, was so fearful. Reason number 1, because he trusted in the true and living God. 1 Samuel 17:26, Amplified Bible. Then David spoke to the men near him, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and removes this disgrace from his challenge to Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine who has taunted and defied the armies of the living God?" Other warriors focused on the dangers of the fight or the spoils of victory still at stake. It seems that David was the only one concerned with the honor of the living God and the reputation of Israel. This demonstrates that David was a man after God's own heart. He cared about the things God cares about. He saw the problem in spiritual terms, not in material or carnal terms. When the man of Israel said this man, David said this uncircumcised Philistine. When the men of Israel said, surely he has come to defy Israel, David said, he should be defying the armies of the living God. When the men of Israel said, the man who kills him, David said, the man who kills this Philistine and removes the shame from Israel. David saw things from the perspective of the Lord, but the men of Israel saw things only from the human perspective. Even when he faced Goliath, we saw the same thing. The Philistine also said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the field. So David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. The Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This day I will give the corpses of the Philistine army to the birds of the sky and the wild beasts of the earth, so that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. 1 Samuel 17:44-46. We can imagine Goliath's deep voice echoing against the high hills surrounding the valley of Elah. The sound caused fear in the hearts of every Israelite soldier, and probably even in some Philistine soldiers. Then David responded with his teenage voice, perhaps even with a cracking voice. The Philistines laughed when they heard David practically shouting in his cracking voice, and the Israelites were horrified and embarrassed. David says, you come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. The Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. David had no idea that he was being taught to face a giant when he was a shepherd fighting lions and bears. We rarely recognize God's purpose in our preparation, but David can take comfort in the fact that the Lord always provides for him and will continue to do so. David understood that God's past help was a sign of God's future help. Saul knew this too. Saul had confidence in God because he supported him in the past. Timothy 4:16-18. David remained steadfast when it would have been tempting to flee. He stayed within reach of the spear of a man who was almost twice his size, a great giant warrior. We must stand firm against evil and wickedness, even when we want to flee. Ephesians 6:13. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that you can successfully resist and stand firm on the day of evil and danger. And having done everything the crisis demands, stand firm in your fully prepared and mobile, victorious place. Ephesians 6:13. David succeeded when everyone thought he wouldn't. In 1 Samuel 17:48-51, when the Philistine arose and advanced to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to face the Philistine. David put his hand into his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone penetrated his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. Thus David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and he struck down the Philistine and killed him. However, there was no sword in David's hand, so he ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword, and drew it out of its sheath, killing him and cutting off his head. When the Philistines saw that their mighty champion was dead, they fled. When the battle ended, it was David, not Goliath, who won the victory. We can be sure that God will lead us to victory if we walk by faith. Romans 8:31. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? 1 Corinthians 15:57 also says, but thanks be to God who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. As Christians, we must have the courage to obey like Abraham, serve like Joshua, reprove sin like Stephen, and speak the truth like Paul. David stood firm when everything told him to run. He achieved a great victory for the people of God. Will we stand firm for God? Who will follow Jesus, standing firm for what is right and raising their banner in the fiercest battle? Who will follow Jesus? Who will answer, I am on the Lord's side, Master, here am I? Courage means standing firm when everyone wants to run, speaking when everyone is afraid to speak, and acting when everyone is paralyzed by fear. Facing danger while maintaining character and moral integrity when everyone is tempted to compromise requires courage. We need to understand that everyone is afraid at some point. Everyone experiences the emotion of fear. Courage is being able to overcome our feelings of fear and take a step forward to do what we know is right. Even the great ones sometimes lose courage. Christians need courage. There are many times when we face challenges to our faith and we are afraid. Fear will make people back away from responding to the gospel. Acts 24:25. But as he was discussing righteousness, self-control, and the coming judgment, Felix became frightened and said, "Go away for the present, and when I find time I will summon you." Revelation 21:8 warns about the consequences of fear. But for the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and sexually immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. God works miracles personally. If you surrender to him, he will do wonders through you. What are the motivations for which you should have courage? 1. You belong to Jesus, therefore do not be afraid. 2. God will vindicate you. Do not be afraid, because the hidden will be seen and the covered will be revealed. 3. Not even death can harm you. Matthew 10:28. 4. God is always close to you. Matthew 10:30. 5. God governs your life with loving hands. Believe in the sovereignty of God, people of God. Take heed to Paul's warnings. When you read the Word of God, especially when reading Paul's advice to his young disciple Timothy, you can see why courage is needed. In a world where the pressure to conform is immense, standing firm in our faith and values, especially when facing opposition or disdain, is a powerful testimony to our confidence in God and his truth. It's easy to follow the crowd, but it requires real strength and conviction to stand firm when everyone else is stepping back or staying silent. The call to be courageous is not just for monumental situations, but for our day-to-day lives at work and at school, where we are constantly faced with choices that test our courage and integrity. Choosing the right path, speaking the truth, defending the unjust, and maintaining integrity even when it might cost us something, these are true acts of courage. The story of David and Goliath is a reminder that sometimes we are called to face giants in our lives, challenges that seem impossible. However, just like David, if we have faith in God and trust in his power rather than our abilities, we can overcome any obstacle. This doesn't mean we won't feel fear, but it means we won't let fear paralyze or prevent us from doing what is right. Remember that true courage doesn't come from ourselves, but from our relationship with God. He strengthens us, empowers us, and enables us to face life's challenges with confidence and hope. We have reached the end of our video. If you liked the video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel to encourage us to bring more videos like this for you. Continue watching our videos by clicking on one of the videos on our screen. Stay with God.